All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I know many of us, we had the chance to talk last month at the Board of Directors meeting, and but this is the first CareerSource Florida Executive Committee meeting of 2022. So appreciate everybody and the time you're taking today to participate as we continue to advance the important work of Florida's workforce development system. I appreciate you all for being here today. We have a short agenda. And we're going to go ahead and just jump right into it. I know everybody's busy, and appreciate you all again for being here. So first, get our house in order. I'd like to ask Executive Coordinator Lisa Kramer to please call the roll.
Stephanie Smith.
Here.
Jennifer O'Flannery Anderson. Brittany Birkin.
Good afternoon.
Tim
This
Center.
is Jennifer. I'm here.
Oh, hey, Jennifer. Thanks. Tim Center.
Greetings from Tallahassee.
Robert Doyle. Sophia Eccleston. She's on. I can see her.
Yeah, I saw her jump off.
Jonathan Miller.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa.
You're welcome.
All right. So when we last met as an executive committee back in August, we received an overview by our president, Michelle Dennard, of the REACH Act, which Governor DeSantis at that time had just signed into law. Among other things, the REACH Act requires the CareerSource Florida Board of Directors to appoint a credentials review committee, bringing additional rigor and accountability to the state's workforce and education systems. The REACH Act also requires the committee to identify degree and non-degree credentials of value and develop a master credential list for performance funding. And at that time, we had the honor of approving the first slate of members of the Credentials Review Committee. And so today we're going to have an opportunity to further support this historic update and receive an update. So more to come on that towards the end of the meeting. And I'll just quickly, just an overview of today's agenda. We're going to begin with the approval of two consent items, which are the minutes from the last two executive committee meetings. We're going to hear from Vice President of Strategic Policy and Performance, Dan McGrew, who will introduce our first action item, the receipt of the master credentials list approved by the Florida Credentials Review Committee earlier this month. Dan, along with Casey Penn, who I think just joined as well, Bureau Chief of the One Stop and Program Support for the Department of Economic Opportunity, they will both present on a vital and timely action item, the consideration of waivers impacting the WIOA youth program. And then we'll receive an update on the work of the Credentials Review Committee from CareerSource Florida Senior Vice President of Business and Workforce Development, Andrew Cornelius, as well as Senior Director of Strategic Policy and Performance, Adam Briggs, and Senior Director of Business and Workforce Development, Daryl McCall. And then we'll just close everything out with President Dennard on the latest of the implementation of the REACH Act. So just a few quick housekeeping items before we jump in. The agenda packet you received Friday includes all the prep materials for today's discussion. We're going to put a link of the agenda packet in the chat if it's not there already, so you can follow along. There are opportunities for public comment after the consent and action items, again, at the end of the meeting. And if you're not on the agenda, but you wish to address this committee, please provide your name and topic in the chat, or you can email Lisa Kramer at lkramer@careersourceflorida.com. And if you're joining by phone, if you can please announce yourself and wait to be recognized. And if you're able to do so, we'd love if you could keep your camera on or turn it on when you wish to speak. Again, identifying yourself by name. And always a reminder, just please keep yourself muted if you're not speaking. And if you're calling in, don't put us on hold or else we'll hear a lot of background music. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so our first item of consideration is today's consent agenda. We've got the April 2021 meeting minutes as well as the August 2021 meeting minutes. Both of those were in your packet last week. Hopefully you've had a chance to review. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. This is John.
Thank you, John.
This is Jennifer. So moved.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Is there any discussion? Are there any members of the public that wish to comment on the consent agenda? All right, if we could call for I think someone's just not on mute. All right, all those committee members in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. All those opposed, any opposed? All right. Seeing no opposition, we'll just go ahead and have President Dennard sign and annotate the board's approval of the minutes for our official record. So thank you so much for that. Moving along, we'll go to action item 1 in our agenda. The Florida Credentials Review Committee and its working groups have focused on the process for approval of a master credentials list over the past several weeks. CareerSource Florida Vice President of Strategic Policy and Performance, Dan McGrew, is here with us today to provide a deeper explanation with the presentation of the first action item. So Dan, with that, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the Executive Committee. As you know, the Reimagining Education and Career Help, or REACH Act, called for the creation of a master credentials list. And it established that for the first year, the 2021 to 2022 school year, that master credentials list would be comprised of the CAPE Industry Certification Funding List and the CAPE Post-Secondary Industry Certification Funding List. That list was adopted by the State Board of Education in August of 2021. Later on in today's meeting, you'll receive updates on the progress of the Credentials Review Committee. But for today's action item, it's important to note that at our March 9th meeting a few weeks ago, the Credentials Review Committee voted to approve this same list from 2021 to 2022 with some technical modifications for the 2022-2023 school year, while the committee continues development on a framework of quality that will be used to evaluate future credentials for inclusion on the master credentials list. The technical modifications that were made to the list include changes to names or code numbers of certifications and the removal of certifications that are no longer available. In your agenda packet, you have the updated list that includes a total of 512 certifications. And a vote today by this a vote in favor of this action item by today's executive committee authorizes CareerSource Florida to deliver that 2022-2023 master credentials list as approved by the Credentials Review Committee to the Department of Education and the State Board of Education for subsequent approval. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Dan. Do we have any questions or comments for Dan from the committee?
Dan, quick question. This is John. So you were saying, 512 certifications, but there is an opportunity if they discover, some kind of certification missing from this list in the future to modify that and add it.
If there are name changes or changes to the certification body, or it is found that a certification is no longer offered or available, those types of technical modifications Department of Ed can continue to make before the State Board of Education approval. You'll hear a little later today from the update on the Credentials Review Committee where the next opportunity for additions to the list will be, which will be later this calendar year.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Any other questions?
I have a question, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to know, since we're going to be getting an update from the Credentials Review Committee, should we kind of wait to hear their update before we approve in case they're, similar to that question that was asked, if there's going to be additions to the list, so if it's going to be an amended, item, or do you think we're good to go? I just kind of feel like maybe we get the update and then see if there needs to be an amended motion, if there's going to be possible changes.
It should, from a scheduling standpoint, the updates you receive would not impact this action item. This action item, as taken by the Credentials Review Committee in March to approve that list. Today's action item is kind of a formal delivery of that approved list that the Credentials Review Committee did to the Department of Education. As it's written in statute, it requires a an approval by the Credentials Review Committee, and then this board's approval to deliver the list.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
Great question. Are there any other questions from the committee? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the action item that Dan just reviewed?
So moved. This is Sophia.
Thank you, Sophia. Second?
Second, this is Brittany.
Thank you.
Do you need a second?
We just got it. Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're
I'm
great.
delayed, obviously.
I appreciate the enthusiasm. Are there any comments or questions from the public? All right, we'll go ahead and move for there to be a vote. Is there official vote that I need to call? Ready? Okay, all right. So all those in favor in the committee, please signify by saying aye.
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 Perfect. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, action item 1 is approved, and we can move forward with action item 2, the WIOA youth waivers. Great. So as a board, we've had many discussions over the past several years on the best way to reach and serve our youth population. The needs of this population and the mechanisms for reaching and assisting them have definitely evolved over the last few years, and those changes have accelerated due to the impact of the pandemic and our state's economic recovery. And so I'd love to bring Dan back and introduce Casey Penn, the Bureau Chief of One Stop and the Program Support for DEO, to present our next action item. So with that, Dan, Casey.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the members of the Executive Committee. I'll just provide a few preliminary comments before passing it over to Casey for the actual waivers that are before you today. But just as some background context, in December of 2020, you may recall that the United States Department of Labor released a training and employment notice that emphasized the public workforce system's role in helping economies recover from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Subsequent to that release, the CareerSource Florida professional team sent out a system-wide survey to identify not only best practices, but also areas of opportunity that could further our role in Florida's continued economic recovery. The results of that survey led to this board taking a number of actions over the past year, including the release of new strategic policies that governed rapid response and layoff aversion, the increased use of supportive services for individuals seeking training. And one of the resulting actions that was taken was in February of 2021, when this board voted to authorize CareerSource Florida and the Department of Economic Opportunity to pursue allowable WIOA waivers with the United States Department of Labor. For further background there, the Secretary of Labor has the authority to waive certain requirements within WIOA in order to promote workforce system innovation and improve job seeker and employment outcome, or employer rather, outcomes. Waiver requests are typically submitted by individual states to promote the state's strategic goals and support the ability of local workforce development boards to innovate within their local economies. Today, Casey Penn, Bureau Chief for the Department of Economic Opportunity and their Division of One Stop and Program Support, is here to present 2 WIOA waivers that involve youth services for your consideration today. Casey?
Thanks, Dan. And Madam Chair, appreciate the opportunity. Happy to bring these to you all today. So there's 2 waivers that we're requesting to submit to USDOL, as Dan mentioned. The first one is in regards to the amount of funds that can be spent on out-of-school or in-school youth as local workforce development boards deliver services. So currently, the requirement is that 75% of your WIOA youth formula funds are spent on out-of-school youth. And, so that leaves up to 25%, obviously, that can be spent on in-school youth. I think we've heard from a number of our local workforce development boards and other partners that the more flexibility they have in that arena will lead to better results as they look at the unique demands of their local economies, their local areas, and the populations they serve. So the first waiver that we are submitting is to give the state some more flexibility across the board in the funding that can be used on in-school and out-of-school youth, bringing that requirement from 75% to 50% as far as funds that need to be used on each population, or rather the maximum or the minimum amount that could be used on out-of-school youth. So local workforce development boards that have a good out-of-school youth program will not be required to make any changes to their local service delivery model. This just will give other local boards that maybe want to have more of a focus on their in-school youth the ability to serve that population. The second waiver is specific to the in-school youth. So individual training accounts are the mechanism by which local workforce development boards fund scholarships and training opportunities for their participants. WIOA allows the use of ITAs for out-of-school youth. It does not provide that allowance for in-school youth. So the second waiver we're submitting is to allow in-school youth to be served with individual training account dollars to give them the opportunity to earn an in-demand credential and whatever other means that the local board has for serving them. So the bottom line is we're just trying to get as much flexibility as possible from the feds because we know that we have a very diverse and unique state, and the needs of one area may differ greatly than the needs of a different area. So allowing us the most flexibility possible is going to allow us to succeed. Thanks. I believe the consent agenda item for consideration today is to authorize CareerSource Florida and the Department of Economic Opportunity to submit those waivers related to in-school and out-of-school youth. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. It's really exciting. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Dan or for Casey on action item 2? Hearing no questions, motion to approve on this action item number 2.
So moved.
Thank you, Brittany. Second?
Second, Sophia.
Thank you, Sophia. Any other discussion or comments or questions from the public on action item 2? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Hi, this is Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, hearing no opposition, we'll note that action item 2 has passed. Thank you so much, Dan. Appreciate you, Casey, for jumping on and explaining that to us. And so we'll move on to the next item in our agenda, the Credential Review Committee update. So as we've been discussing, the Florida Credential Review Committee has been very, very busy, even in the time since we last met as a full board just a month ago. The process for arriving at today's action item and the additional responsibilities of the committee have involved the participation of many stakeholders and partners. CareerSource Florida Senior Vice President of Business and Workforce Development, Andrew Cornelius, is here with more details on the committee's work. So we will, Andrew, there you are, I see you. So I'll go ahead and kick it over to you to walk us through the committee update.
Thank you, Chairman Smith, and good afternoon, Executive Committee members. And as you've noted in your opening remarks, the work supporting the Credentials Review Committee has been quite busy, and we're definitely in full swing. Included in your materials are 2 documents related to the Credentials Review Committee. The first is an overview of the 5 duties of the committee as outlined in the REACH Act. The second is a summary of 4 work groups now convened and working deliberately, established around each element of the framework of quality. The framework will ultimately be used to identify credentials of value for inclusion on the master credentials list. Each work group is led by a member of the Credentials Review Committee and facilitated by a professional team member from one of the lead agencies tasked with implementing the REACH Act provisions. Each work group also includes subject matter experts from our local workforce development boards, business groups, economic development, education, both public and private, and agencies, which provides for great broad-based input and discussion. And then weekly, professionals from the REACH office, Department of Economic Opportunity, Department of Education, and of course the CareerSource Florida team meet as a steering committee to ensure we're making progress to support the committee's work. The master credentials list, approved by the committee, as Dan mentioned, on March 9th, and now on its way to be delivered to the State Board of Education by your vote today, is very important, as it serves as a public and transparent inventory of state-approved credentials of value, directs the use of federal and state funds for workforce education and training programs that lead to approved credentials of value. And thirdly, it guides workforce education and training programs by informing the public of credentials that have value in the current or future job market. And if you'll go to the next slide, this graphic outlines the credential application process the committee will follow to build the master credentials list over time. Using official labor market data from the newly established Labor Market Estimating Conference, the work groups will bring forward recommendations that will create the framework, apply wage, demand, and sequencing thresholds, include quarterly adoptions of new credentials that meet the framework of quality, verify that the credentials are valued by employers and attest to market-ready skills, and then approved by the committee for inclusion on the list. The committee will also conduct an annual review of the entire list, identifying those credentials that no longer meet the rubric. So it's always going to be in linked step with the market's talent needs. As staff to the committee, we recognize that this work is complicated, multifaceted, with interdependencies. In fact, on February 17th, the same day our board last met, the Labor Market Estimating Conference also met. But the anticipated supply-demand analysis, key to the committee's work, was not accepted by the conferees in favor of a more rigorous analysis anticipated by August. Amy Baker, coordinator of the Economic and Demographic Research and chair of the conference, shared with the committee that the work of estimating Florida's labor market supply and demand and wages is complicated. Even more so with the growth in our population. We are among the fastest growing states in the country, considering each and every occupation, some of which can be in multiple industries, interpreting various data series, and producing data at the regional and county levels. Gratefully, she outlined for us and the committee members the next steps she and her team will be undertaking the next few months. For that reason, the committee on March 9th readopted the master credentials list currently in place, awaiting the Labor Market Estimating Conference product in August. Candidly, that gives a bit of breathing room to our work groups. So, Chairman, I'd like to now turn it over to Senior Director Dr. Adam Briggs to overview for you the work underway by the Wage Thresholds Work Group. He'll then turn it over to Senior Director Daryl McCall to overview the work underway by the Demand Thresholds Working Group. And then I'll overview the work of the two remaining work groups, credential sequencing and credential gap identification. So, Dr. Briggs.
Thank you so much, Andra, and good afternoon, members of the CareerSource Florida Executive Committee. I'm happy to provide an update on the recent work of the Wage Thresholds Work Group on behalf of our group's leader, DEO Deputy Secretary and Credentials Review Committee member Adrian Johnston, and our other work group colleagues from multiple partners, both public and private. Our group is currently exploring preliminary elements of a wage methodology using existing tools and data sets. Next slide, please. These exercises will reveal salient features and factors that will inform our ultimate approach once we receive the definitive data of record from the Labor Market Estimating Conference. The two methodological questions we've been dealing with are, first, how will we measure wages associated with credentials? Our two data sources are the Occupational Employment and Wage Survey and the actual wage records captured by the Unemployment Insurance System. Our second question involves how best to set wage thresholds. These recommendations and the rationales for them will be developed and submitted to the Credentials Review Committee for their review, feedback, and adoption. As we consider the pros and cons of various approaches to these questions, we are now shifting into some more practical types of analysis that involve taking data and filtering it through the different frameworks to see the outcomes produced by these models. In the coming weeks, we look forward to receiving a set of full wage figures for all occupations and occupation groups. This will enable future work focused on the concept of middle to high level wages and, on various wage parameters. We'll also be focused on various wage parameters and their effects relative to the 8 education levels discussed at the Labor Market Estimating Conference meeting on February 17th. That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Adam, and good afternoon, CareerSource Florida Executive Committee members. I am happy to get a report out on the Framework of Quality Work Group, and that is the Demand Thresholds Work Group and the progress that we've had so far. This effort is led by Credential Review Committee member Jennifer Grove, a longtime friend, a former CareerSource Florida board member, and a champion of workforce and talent development. We have been a busy little work group. We have met 5 times since January. Thankful for all the members of the work group. And our work group really took a broad approach and looked at all the current demand threshold methodologies that are out there. We had reports from Department of Economic Opportunity on the statewide, the regional, and the local targeted occupations list, members of local boards, our Board of Governors folks on their strategic emphasis on university level thresholds, also our Department of Education folks, the CTE audit, the Perkins, and those demand thresholds. There's quite a gamut, if you will, of opportunities out there to look at different thresholds. The one big factor we realized was that Jimmy Heckman DEO and the product they produce actually gets used by a lot of the folks out there across our partners. So Department of Education, Board of Governors, those folks. We also looked at the current threshold methodology that's being used by DEO and has been for years, and that is the growth rate of at least 500 openings and 1.26% growth, or 1,200 openings in any growth. And we are currently having them to run data runs against that methodology, looking for gaps, if you will, and opportunities to kind of revisit that threshold. Is that the correct threshold? Well, we in Florida, we've been using that threshold for years, and that will influence the work being done by the Labor Market Estimating Conference. So we're in a position now where we are at our next meeting this Friday. We're looking at flushing out a demand threshold definition and process where we can make sure we allow for that local flexibility. I wanted to thank Stacy Campbell Dominic with the FWDA and the local workforce boards for gathering intelligence that fed into this into our work on the flexibility at the local level and being able to respond to not only emerging demand but also economic development opportunities as they come to fruition. So In conclusion, we're at I think at a good standpoint now to pull in all of these brains on our team and pull together a nice methodology for consideration of the Credential Review Committee. So I thank you for this opportunity, and I turn it back over to Andrew Cornelius.
Thank you, Daryl, and thank you, Dr. Briggs. Great report outs. Chairman and Executive Committee, I'll now cover the last two work groups involved in this work. The next slide is the Credential Sequencing Work Group led by Catherine Golitz from the Florida Department of Agriculture and staffed by Tara Goodman, Vice Chancellor of the Florida Department of Education. The next slide shows the primary discussions within this work group, and they've included a reflection from members on definitions of sequencing and stackability of credentials. Their preference is to use the term sequencing. Concepts discussed have included lifelong learning, career pathways with clear steps, skills upgrades for those currently employed, actual evidence that credential holders stack to another credential, and wage gains along the sequence. The work group is also reviewing the recommendations from the Education Strategy Group on sequencing, and listed on the slide are the 5 criterion from that body of work. And then finally, on to the Credential Occupation Correlation and Gap Identification Work Group, which enjoys the longest name of the 4. We often remind Dr. Keith Richard from the Florida Department of Education, who staffs that work group, and it's led very ably by committee member James Taylor. The next slide shows that the primary goal of this work group is to develop a process for identifying new credentials that can be offered in our state and added to the master credentials list, especially based on current or emerging labor market demand. Currently, the team is working on a program inventory and a process for updating it annually. And the team is also exploring how best to ensure industry reviews of any new programs. The Credential Review Committee is scheduled again to meet in Tallahassee on April 28th to hear progress reports from the 4 work groups, review entry-level wage data from a labor market estimating conference, and determine how local demand will go forward. The next slide indicates that details on all the committee meetings, including agendas, presentations, and meeting recordings, are available at the CareerSourceFlorida.com website. So, Chairman Smith, that concludes my update on the Credentials Review Committee. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Andrea or Dr. Briggs or Daryl? I really appreciate this timely update. We're here, I know we hear a lot of it in our past board meetings and in the news and just rumblings around town. So I just really appreciate this concise update of all the goings on with the Credential Review Committee. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right, moving on, we'll go ahead and go into I believe our last update. Yeah, our last update on the agenda. So in addition to the staffing of the Florida Credentials Review Committee, the CareerSource Florida professional team has also been working closely with state partners in the governor's office, DEO, and the Department of Education to implement additional provisions of the REACH Act. And so we have, last but not least, President Dennard is here to update us on the implementation of those efforts. So Michelle, with that, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, and I'm happy today to get to update all of you on our progress of REACH Act implementation. You've already got to hear about the incredible progress made with the Credentials Review Committee, and thank you for moving their work forward. As the state's principal workforce policy organization, CareerSource Florida is, as part of our REACH Act implementation, exploring approaches to aligning Florida's 24 local workforce boards consistent with the charge in the Act for reducing the number of local boards. And that language is specifically called out in the Act. The Act seeks to achieve a more coordinated approach in delivering and using essential workforce development resources and services through enhanced alignment and accountability. The REACH Act asks us to take an integrated and collaborative approach to strengthen partnerships and enhance access to education, training, and employment opportunities within and across all of the components of our workforce development ecosystem in Florida. The REACH Act requires evaluation and improvement to address administration, coordination, accountability, flexibility, and looks to maximize funds utilized for employment training and business services to evolve to the ever-changing needs of Florida's businesses and Florida's economy. The new law really looks to advance the aims of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which also calls for state workforce development boards to review and continuously improve programs to support a comprehensive and streamlined workforce development system. I've mentioned previously in our meetings and with meetings with local workforce board leaders, our plans to hire an external consultant to evaluate alignment opportunities and look for challenges for enhanced local and regional collaboration and service delivery. We have wanted to survey other states that have reorganized and to look at the best possible way for engaging local and state stakeholders in this review and in our future plans. So today we have agreed upon a scope of work with an external consultant, EY, to help undertake this evaluation. And the scope of work was really a collaborative effort. We took certainly the help and advice of the REACH office, among others. And that scope is posted on our website, along with the meeting materials for this meeting. If you go to Boardroom, and the meeting materials for this meeting are there, and you'll see a link there to the particular scope that we've agreed to with EY. So the next step is for EY to review information that's forthcoming from the Department of Economic Opportunity to help us look at best practices across the country and help us think through. Thank you. And Nathan has put the link to that information in the chat. Thank you, Nathan. And to help us think through the best possible plans for engaging local elected officials, local board leaders, and state level stakeholders over the summer, all with an eye toward helping us answer the question, are we providing best-in-class services to Florida businesses and Florida job seekers? So you'll get to hear from EY at our June board meeting, get their advice, and engage in a discussion about our plans moving forward and our plans to hear from as many stakeholders as possible, as local leaders and workforce professionals are the heart of the CareerSource Florida network. We have been and continue to be committed to remaining engaged with the local workforce development board, alignment with our local leaders, and keeping stakeholders informed. The pillars of our network are to collaborate, innovate, and lead. And the REACH Act offers us the opportunity to look at all three of those pillars as we evaluate ways to enhance services and advance our vision to be the global leader for talent. And helping Florida job seekers find meaningful work and meeting the needs of our state's growing businesses and responding to the REACH Act helps ensure our collective future success. So again, if you want to take a look at that scope of work, it's posted in the meeting chat and available on our website, along with the materials for this meeting. And as the implementation of the REACH Act continues, we're going to continue to make all information regarding alignment, letter grades, and other information publicly available. So we'll provide more information about how to access those materials as those plans are finalized. And you'll also recall our conversation last fall regarding the REACH Act requirement of letter grades being issued to local workforce development boards. And I'm happy to report that great progress has been made. A work group on this topic has been meeting frequently. It includes several local workforce board leaders, enabling the work group to take their advice and to listen about what those letter grades and what the components that attribute to them can mean at the local level. So as this work group works towards a framework or a rubric for letter grades, we expect to share that with you as well. So obviously, REACH Act implementation has been and continues to be a priority for the CareerSource Florida professional team. And we appreciate your questions, your advice, and your input. We are available anytime to take that. And with that, I conclude my brief update, but I'm happy to take any questions.
It's amazing how much work has happened over the last year. Kudos to you all and the team for moving the ball forward here. This is Herculean effort.
Hey, Michelle, this is Lloyd Gregg.
Oh, hey, thank you.
Yeah, hi. So I just had a quick question. So on the board grading, when is that going to take effect? What's your time frame kind of thing?
It is anticipated that grades will be issued likely in the fall of this year. So as the work group kind of continues working on what that formula or that rubric looks like, that is the anticipated time frame today.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Michelle. And again, on behalf of the board, I appreciate you and all the work your team is doing to make sure that we're implementing this law with transparency and integrity and supporting the governor's vision for accessible, accountable, and equitable workforce and education system. So appreciate you very much. And we'll, of course, as Michelle reported out, we'll be working closely with all the local board partners as well as our state partners throughout this process to ensure the best outcomes on this. So more to come. Appreciate this very, very timely update. All right. And so now we're at the public comment portion of the meeting. I'd like to just first invite any members of the executive committee who wanted you have a discussion item or a comment at this time. If you have anything, please let us know.
This is Sophia. I just want to echo what you said, Madam Chair. I really appreciate all the hard work that staff has been doing. I mean, it's very obvious all the time and effort that's going into it. So kudos to the entire team as well.
And Lisa, do we have any members from the public who have submitted their names, or is there anyone that would like to be recognized to comment at this time?
No, Chair Smith, I haven't received any public comment requests.
Okay. Right. Well, I appreciate all of the discussion today. Our board, professional team, our state and local partners have a lot of work ahead of us this coming year. And as other states are doing, our leaders at the state and local level recognize our business needs and the expectations of the workforce at this, evolving at a really rapid pace. And so continuous improvement, we know, is one of CareerSource Florida's core values. And so we must all be willing to embrace these new opportunities to be our best stewards of taxpayer dollars while providing the most effective and efficient services to our customers. So I really, again, appreciate everyone's time today. Our next meeting will be in person, which I'm excited about, in Tallahassee, June 8th and 9th. So please mark your calendar for that. And until then, thank you again for all that you're doing. And just hope you all enjoy the rest of your week, and meeting is adjourned.